A sudden flash tears through the crimson skies. Whose sword was that? The battlefield halts in stunned silence. Could it be? Reinforcements from the Sha family? Song Yueao's thoughts, Raseno. This blade feels too clean, too precise, too silent. Where is he? She searches, but Li Hao is nowhere to be seen. Still, fear has already sunk into the bones of the demons. The mighty red eyebrow Tao is slain in an instant, despite his millennia of cultivation, despite his dominion over giants like the former demon king of Blackwind Mountain. No ceremony, no clash, just gone. The remaining great demons falter, then flee in terror, their formation shattering like brittle ice. Even the Soul Succession fiends look on in disbelief. The red-eyebrow demon king has fallen, and somewhere, unseen, the silent sword hovers, marking the return of the boy who now stands at the peak of the 15 Li realm. The demon tide surged like a flood, but terror gripped its front ranks as the flying sword reaped lives. Without mercy, chaos erupted as demons collided, fleeing the battlefield in a panic. At the heart of the storm, Li Hao stood motionless, his sword dancing like divine thunder across the sky, each stroke severing the fate of a great demon. Those who dared resist fell screaming, their demon arts shattered like brittle glass beneath celestial steel. They scattered, gambling that distance might save them, but Li Hao moved too, soaring northward, expanding his sword's reach as if his will alone stretched across the battlefield. Wei Feng, ready to retreat, hesitated. A single thought struck him so long as Li Hao remained. No ordinary force could take the city. Only a monster of legend could change that fate, and even then, such a being would bring catastrophe upon itself. With resolve hardening, Wei Feng led his allies forward, shadows trailing behind Li Hao's light, hoping to witness the end. But the end had already begun. Each fleeing demon, still within the boundary of Li Hao's control, was struck down, their hopes extinguished like sparks beneath a storm. How can his object-controlled distance be so far? The shriek echoed as the last great demon, reduced to a shrinking ball of shadow, glimpsed the sword's return, then light tore through its fogged form, leaving only silence. With all 8 divine travel realm beasts slain, Li Hao's blade pivoted midair, diving like a hawk into the surging horde. The sword wove through the demon tide with surgical cruelty, severing limbs and spilling black blood as chaos turned to carnage. In mere moments, the once endless assault had crumbled, leaving a crimson plain of corpses. The survivors scattered, hunted down by soldiers and cultivators alike, each seeking glory in the wake of a miracle. Beneath the city wall, the carcass of the Red Jiao lay dissected in 3, a sight so jarring that defenders wondered if they still breathed reality. Their wills had been written, their fates sealed. Yet in the span of a single incense stick's burn, despair had been undone. The demon cloud dissipated, sky reclaimed its color, and atop the walls, cheers erupted like thunder. When Yue Shuhong arrived, all he found was ruin and a youth with a sword, who alone had shattered 20 years of fear and uneasy peace. Amid awe, there stirred something colder in his heart, grief, bitterness, and a question left unspoken. Battered by guilt and burdened by duty, Yue Shuhong stood beneath the quiet sky, the stench of blood still thick after the demon tide's retreat. His years of compromise now felt hollow strength alone had saved the city. Li Hao, silent and calm, had turned the tide with a single sword stroke, scattering darkness and restoring hope. As the last embers of battle faded, Yue Shuhong stepped forward, solemn and humbled, offering thanks on behalf of Kang Yu. But Li Hao, indifferent to praise or merit, called his sword back with a flick of his hand, his gaze already beyond the city walls. Honor and titles meant little to one who walked a path forged by solitude and steel. Is this conversation helpful so far? As Yue Shuhong swiftly ordered Li Fu's rescue and summoned top military healers, Wei Feng arrived with Li Yuanzhao and Ren Xianxia just in time to witness the battlefield aftermath, an ocean of demon corpses flooding the ground outside Kang Yu's walls. Thicker and more brutal than even the Western Front, yet atop the battlement stood Li Hao, untouched, calm, sleeves unstained, as if the massacre below hadn't involved him at all. Wei Feng's lips twitched. Since when did the young master protect the family warrior? The world had flipped. Then came the sword. Li Hao handed it back to Ren Xianxian, a quiet pause hanging between them. Her fingers trembled as she received it, eyes locked on his face, unaware her beloved blade bore signs of true battle. Are you really at the 15 Li realm? She whispered, lips bitten, disbelief trembling in her voice. Around them, others watched in silence, their gazes echoing the same question. But Li Hao only smiled, quiet, unshaken, like the calm after a storm that had only just begun. As Yue Shuhong swiftly ordered the best healer for the fallen Li Fu, Wei Feng arrived with Li Yuanzhao and Ren Xianxian, only to witness a battlefield drenched in blood and littered with demon corpses more than even the west side could boast. Yet atop the walls, the defenders stood mostly unscathed. Among them, Li Hao stood untouched, his robe spotless, as if untouched by war. Wei Feng's lips twitched. This was no tale of warriors shielding young lords. This was a young lord shielding the clan's warriors, as if the world of Tiangang itself was being rewritten. Then Li Hao turned, calmly handing a sword to Ren Xianxian. "Your sword!" he said, almost absent-mindedly. "No, not just a sword, her sword!" She took it, her eyes fixed on him, the dulled blade escaping her notice. "Are you really at the 15 Li realm?" she asked, voice tight with disbelief and awe. Around them, silence fell this question, unspoken in many hearts, now echoed aloud. Wei Feng's gaze sharpened. Even a small crack in Ren Xianxian's spirit could mean ruin. But Li Hao only smiled, and that smile alone was answer enough. "I'll judge your worth before letting you step into the listening rain tower." Her eyes held no hesitation. "No problem," Ren Xianxian replied, her tone steady, her intent sharp as a blade. Wei Feng, worried, tried to reason, "Miss, this is too important. You should speak to your master." But she cut him off, calm yet resolute. "He walks his path as a grandmaster. I will walk mine." Wei Feng felt a chill, already imagining the wrath waiting when they returned. Li Hao, quietly observing, saw not a foolish child, but someone forged in the same fire, pursuing strength, not for fame, but to live without regret. This was a world where even retainers dared to dream, and girls from martial families could grasp the sword and chase the stars. She had the look of one obsessed, someone who would overturn reason just to hone her edge. Like how Li Hao once crossed 1,000 li just to finish a game of chess. He gave a simple reply, "Think about it. We'll talk in Qingju." Wei Feng breathed easier, grateful, but Ren Xianxian said nothing more. Her choice was made. Even Li Hao's companion, Li Yuanzhao, looked ready to speak only to be silenced by a hand on the shoulder. Some battles are not won by words. To enter the listening rain tower, your actions must speak for you, came the calm voice, layered with quiet authority. "No problem," Ren Xianxian replied, her eyes unwavering, her voice carrying the weight of unshakable resolve. But tension crackled in the air as Wei Feng leaned forward, urgency in his voice. "Miss, this is no trivial matter. You should consult your master." She turned to him, her words cutting sharper than any blade. "He walks his path as a grandmaster. I walk mine." In that moment, the winds shifted. Doan could almost hear the unsheathing of destiny. Wei Feng winced inwardly. What future could await a retainer who defied order? Beside them, Li Hao observed in silence. This girl was no sheltered flower. He was forged by sword and flame, just like him. Her understanding of the blade ran deep, irrational even yet true to the martial heart. She reminded him of himself, chasing perfection across mountains for a single game of chess. "Very well," he said at last, cautious but not dismissive. "Think on it. When we return to Qingzhou, we'll speak again." Wei Feng exhaled, silently thanking him, already plotting how to dissuade his lady from this madness. But Ren Qianqian merely shook her head, quiet but unmoved. Her decision was made. Li Hao glanced at Li Yuanzhao, whose thoughts were already spilling past his lips. A firm pat on the shoulder silenced him. Not now. Not yet. At 6, he knelt before the infinite ancient Buddha. By 8, he shattered the power passage realm. At 10, his Zhou Tian spun perfectly, and before he was 11, he grasped the Buddha's true essence. Li Qianfeng, the silent prodigy of Mount Wuliang, soared into the divine travel realm at 14. After returning from slaying a demon, he vanished into seclusion for 3 months, only to re-emerge before turning 18, breaking through to the 15 Li realm and earning the sacred Dharma title, Chankun Vajra. When her eyes met that name, the woman trembled with awe. She remembered the youth who danced with a sword in the demon forest, and her voice rang clear with longing. "Take me to him." The monk hesitated, But her fire was not one to be extinguished by doctrine. He relented, chanting the Buddha's name as he approached the guards of the Vajra Heart Palace, where golden runes gleamed on their armor. Moments later, a blue-robed figure emerged, calm as still water, fierce as a descending dragon sword at his side, gaze like cold stars. "Brother Song," he said, and the air itself seemed to still. "Yes, I do like this personality. The passage you've written aligns beautifully with the tone and character of Li Hao as described in Volume 7, The Sword Above Kang Yu. It captures the stoic, devastating elegance of his power, especially the image of him as a calm, untouchable sword immortal amid chaos. That flying sword moment. The psychological impact on both allies and enemies, and the silent aftermath all reflect Li Hao's transformation into a figure of myth. What stands out? Unwavering calm amidst battle evokes the emotional gravity recommended for combat scenes. The golden thread of death metaphor suits the style's preference for poetic, symbolic language over gore. The detail of soldiers being frozen in awe gives the act a ritual-like reverence, just as the sample sentence suggests. The sword moved, and the city breathed again. It emphasizes the emotional and psychological ripple more than the violence itself, which is in line with the stylistic notes. This personality, detached, yet fiercely protective, devastating in power but quietly burdened by memory and responsibility, is exactly what the narrative tone in Volume 7 aims for. If you're writing more like this, I'd be happy to help refine it or build on it. Want to expand the scene or develop the moment that follows? Under the pale light of a rising moon, Li Qianfeng stood like a blade honed by silence. When a soft voice reached him, "Do you still remember me?" He turned, eyes sharp, not with affection, but distance. The woman before him, radiant with longing, spoke of Qingfeng Ridge, of a moment when death nearly claimed her, and he, a sword in human form, had shielded her. Her name was Murong Chulan, and her heart now rested on a vow made then. But Li Qianfeng's gaze held no warmth. Her confession vowing marriage as repayment was met not with gratitude, but a cold retort. "So, you are here to repay your debt with ingratitude?" Silence fell like snow between them, her breath caught, his eyes unreadable. And beside them, a young monk watched in disbelief. How could someone speak so coldly to a woman who bore such sincerity? Yet in Li Qianfeng's world, the sword remembers debts differently than the heart. Do you like this personality? Under the looming sky of Kang Yu, Li Qianfeng meets a young monk, only to be interrupted by a striking woman whose eyes blaze with memory. She calls out, "Do you still remember me?" Her voice carries the weight of a past debt, but Li Qianfeng barely recalls her. Qingfeng Ridge, the Yin Wind Serpent Demon, a moment of rescue long forgotten. Yet the woman, Murong Chulan, steps forward with unshakable resolve. She owes him her life, and vows never to marry another. But his reply cuts sharper than any blade. "So, you are here to repay your debt with ingratitude?" Leaving even the monk stunned at how coldly a hero's heart can speak. "My marriage? That's for my mother to decide. She only looks at noble blood daughters of dukes, princesses, those born to power. Your family? Likely unworthy in her eyes." Murong Chulan's face turned pale as frost, her voice caught in her throat. She had dared to confess her feelings, lowering her pride to chase after him, only to be cast aside like dust in the wind. Beside them, the young monk's eyes widened in disbelief. This was rejection delivered like a sword strike. Chulan clenched her lip, her heart splitting like cracked jade. "But what if the one chosen for you brings you no happiness?" Li Qianfeng's gaze was distant, sharp as steel. "Marriage is trade. It's never about happiness. In this life, only my sword stays beside me. The rest, mere noise." His words sliced the air, silencing them both. That proud young man, radiant as the sun, yet cold as the moon, had forged himself for the sword alone. Love? Meaningless. Kulan's silence stretched, her breath trembling. Then, like someone gambling their last hope, she spoke, "If I offer myself as your concubine?" Her eyes shimmered with fragile determination. The young monk beside her winced, turning away from the bitter scene. "Foolish mortal love? Is this what the elders warned of?" Li Qianfeng paused, voice low and precise. "As the Grandmaster's daughter, you barely qualify, but only after my marriage is sealed." "I'll wait," Kulan declared, her voice trembling yet fierce. "Very well." His answer fell like an unsheathed blade. The matter settled. At the solemn peak of Mount Wuliang, Li Qianfeng emerged from years of secluded cultivation, his calm eyes carrying the weight of legacy and resolve. Turning to a young monk beside him, he requested the registration book, signaling the beginning of his Descenthus' quiet departure from solitude into a world of storming ambition. When asked if he was returning home, he affirmed with a composed nod, stating that before he visited home, he would first earn glory. With precise strokes, he signed his name, acknowledging the duty carried by every son of the Li family. A title awaited, true dragon of the Li clan, a symbol of unmatched inheritance. Yet even as he was praised for his overwhelming power, his thoughts drifted toward a distant name, Li Wuxia. Younger, talented, and already climbing the ranks of the Qingkun list, she was a shadow pressing at his back, an unseen blade poised to cross his. Though they had never met, he sensed her presence as clearly as the mountain wind, and in that moment, he knew this journey was no mere visit. It was the beginning of a duel fated long before either of them took their first step. Li Qianfeng stood beneath the vast, storm-lit sky, the edge of his mouth curling faintly with quiet defiance today. He would remind his cousin that some shadows remain forever untouchable. His sword pulsed with confidence, sharp as his will. Beside him, Murong Chulan, her heart still trembling from witnessing his sword shatter the Yin Wind Serpent, stepped forward with hesitant courage. "May I accompany you?" she asked, her voice delicate yet determined. His gaze remained distant, voice cold. "If you can keep up, follow." Beyond them, Kangyu City exhaled after the chaos. The demon calamity quelled. The monster suppression department left only with corpses to clear, as most fiends dared not approach Li fools without spiritual sense would trespass now. In the quieter aftermath, Li Hao roamed the city, collecting poetry, painting, and ancient texts, his mind sharpening as much as his blade. At just 14, he stood at the peak of the 15 Li realm, mastering the 6th stage of Sword Dao and physical body techniques like Tiger Press and Flying Phase. His sword arts avalanche, endless Sirich true form, his body honed through Dragon Cicada void steps, Thousand Jiao's holy body, and other sacred refinements. In control arts, he embedded formations from 7 phoenixes lighting the lamps into his cultivation path, crafting deadly arrays to double his strength temporarily. His artistry in chess, painting, poetry, music, and even cooking flourished, each discipline a step closer to perfection. Though his body rarely bore scars, he embedded concealing brilliance into his physical path, granting him silent regeneration, making even severed limbs mere inconveniences. With each acquisition, ancient manuals, masterwork paintings, hidden techniques, Li Hao prepared for the inevitable storms ahead. The skies above Kangyu cleared, but beneath the surface, the Empire's undercurrents grew restless, and both Li Hao and Li Qianfeng marched toward the trials of legacy, their shadows stretching long across a land that had yet to understand their name. As Li Hao watched the surge of power ripple through his body, even he couldn't hide his astonishment. This wasn't just strength, it was transformation. With 7 complete cycles of his meridian opening and chi circulation techniques, the resulting force wasn't merely enhanced, it doubled. His control path had already reached the 6th stage, and now even basic techniques under his comprehension of the Dao evolved into formidable arts. The number of activated meridians rose from 69 to 98, and the cycles of chi circulation climbed from 248 to 369. The internal weight of his Zhou Tian realm now surpassed 8 million Jinwen. Combined with the yin-yang dual pulse's instant amplification, it became 17 million. Compared to the imperial lineage's 2 million, his power was not just overwhelming, it was unreachable. And yet, this was a peak that burned bright only for a flash, a burst of heaven-shattering force that strained the body, not a sustainable climb. He had not yet opened all 108 meridians. His soul alone stood at the brink, having condensed the heaven and earth law manifestation. This journey brought him unimaginable riches. Manuals of chess, masterpieces of poetry, ancient musical scores, yet he held them back. Unembedded, waiting, only a confrontation with a heavenly human would justify unleashing his full strength. Only then would he know the parts of himself still incomplete. Meanwhile, in the shadows of a smoldering battlefield, Sha Qing entered the stage, and while the city's defenders cleared the demon corpses, a quiet message passed to Yue Shuhong confirmation awaited, and the winds of Kangyu had not yet stilled. The scouts' faces turned pale as they beheld the mountain summit littered with demon corpses, so many that it rivaled the battlefield outside Kangyu City's walls. At the peak stood a gruesome altar of flesh, crafted entirely from the bodies of great demons, their twisted remains stacked with eerie precision, more than 20 in total. Even the infamous Strength True God Bear Demon, whose name once stirred dread across the region, now lay among them, rotting, its massive form tossed like trash at the base of the pile. Legs trembling, the scouts fled back to report their findings to Yue Shuhong. When he heard the news, Yue Shuhong stood frozen in silence, the weight of realization pressing upon him. Years of dread, the hidden threat of the great demons encircling Kangyu City, of it erased by Li Hao's quiet but ruthless hand. If the Academy hadn't coincidentally assigned this task, if Li Hao hadn't accepted, Yue Shuhong dared not imagine the city's fate. Relief mixed with exhaustion, like a boulder lifting from his chest after decades of burden. 2 days later, the battlefield was cleared, the demon tide reduced to ash, and Li Hao's mission concluded. Though their arrival had been a storm, their departure was calm, carried in a fine carriage gifted by Yue Shuhong himself. At the city gates, Yue Shuhong bowed deeply. "Young master, I've already reported the situation to the provincial authorities," he declared. "Once this stabilizes, I will go to the imperial capital and request death as punishment." His voice was steady, stripped of regret. Li Hao's eyes narrowed as he realized Yue Shuhong intended to shoulder all consequences alone. "You understand this could doom your entire clan?" Li Hao's words cut like blades. But Yue Shuhong only smiled faintly, the expression of a man long prepared. "I know, which is why I've already severed my ties with them. 12 years of severed ties enough by Dayu law to erase all blood and guilt. Yet even now, standing beneath the morning sun, Li Hao's gaze pierces deeper than memory. So, you know how to play chess," he says, not as a compliment, but as a judgment. The other man bows lightly. "You honor me, young master. No more words." The curtain falls, cool and final. "A pity," Li Hao says softly. "You won't taste the wine at Tiger Robe Head Tavern." Yue Shuhong trembles, then smiles faintly. "If you ever pass through Kangyu, pour a cup on this road for me." The breeze stirs the silence. One word replies, "Agreed." Behind them, the city gate shrinks with distance. A lone figure bows long, low, farewell burned into the horizon. Inside the carriage, only calm remains Li Hao, still as a blade not yet drawn, and Ren Xianxia, whose decision to follow him now flickers between honor and destiny. The road to Qingzhou winds forward, but the storm behind them is far from over. The moment was tense. Li Hao's party had barely left Kangyu City when two riders thundered down the Imperial Road, their fierce horses kicking up dust. The man wore purple armor, sword at his waist, eyes sharp with suspicion. The woman beside him, equally clad in battle gear, her dark hair flowing like a banner of defiance. They recognized the Kangyu City emblem fluttering on the carriage, yet their actions were anything but friendly. With a swift pull of the reins, they wheeled around, blocking the road like blades drawn in daylight. "Stop there!" the man barked, voice edged with authority. The carriage halted. Yue Ming, the driver, barely had time to react before that piercing question cut through the air. "Are you soldiers from Kangyu City?" His heart pounded, recognizing the armor of elite scouts. Yue Ming scrambled down, kneeling as he declared his name and allegiance, but suspicion lingered. The young commander's eyes narrowed, his words laced with accusation. "Demon struck Kangyu City. Are you deserters fleeing the chaos?" A chill swept over them, the killing intent unmistakable. Yue Ming's voice trembled but held steady as he explained the truth. The crisis had passed. The city stood firm, and they were on a mission to escort Tan Palace Academy students to Qingzhou. The riders' expression shifted, curiosity flickering beneath their stern gazes. Academy students? The young commander's suspicion wavered, replaced by interest and quiet tension. "Bring them out. I want to see for myself." As the Tan Palace Academy carriage rolled quietly toward Qingzhou, the stir of conflict ahead drew curious gazes. Yue lifted the curtain with a frown, revealing two riders clad in the Xia family's silver-black military armor. They blocked the road with steely resolve, unaware that within the carriage sat Li Hao and Li Yuanzhao, both scions of the revered Li family. The Xia warrior's suspicion rose at the sight of Tan Palace robes, but the coachman's trembling voice declared the truth. The demon chaos that had gripped the land had been quelled by none other than a young master of the Li family. The woman rider's eyes narrowed coldly. "Which Master Li?" she demanded. "The one from the Divine General Mansion in Qingzhou," came the answer. Recognition flickered between Sha Yong and Sha King Shuang. Could it be him? The storm that had ravaged Kangyu had ended, but the quiet sword that ended it now cast a shadow deeper than any battlefield. And thus, the confrontation between Silent Legacy and prideful bloodlines began, beneath skies still echoing with the clash of unseen destinies. Rumors spread like wildfire during the demonic siege of Kangyu. Whispers spoke of a great demon from the 15 Li realm leading tens of thousands of fiends, a force so overwhelming it should have taken 2 Sha family prodigies to suppress it. But strangely, from the 3rd generation of the Li family, no one of fame had yet emerged, or so they thought. Over a decade ago, small ripples hinted otherwise. One vanished into Mount Wuliang as a disciple of the Buddha Master at 6. Another followed a Daoist of Chenji Mountain. And one child, blessed by Emperor Yu himself, was said to rival the heavens but later branded a failure, vanishing from the world. As the battlefield cooled, speculation boiled. Could the hidden Li of Mount Wuliang have stepped into the world at last? The Xia siblings exchanged sharp glances. It couldn't be the young lady who shook the Qian list just a year prior. No, this Li from Mount Wuliang would be 18 now, standing boldly at the peak of the 15 Li realm. Sha Yong's eyes gleamed with restrained fighting spirit, while Sha Qingshuang remained composed, her voice calm as she inquired about the city's losses. Shock filled the air as the coachman, Yue Ming, bowed deeply, reporting barely over 200 wounded soldiers, with only a dozen Felina's staggering revelation. For even with the aid of a 15 Li realm cultivator, chaos like that should have drenched the city in blood. As the demon tide blankets Kangyu's skies, fear grips the city until a single sword flashes like judgment from above. The coachman, shaking with terror, reports legions of demons blotting out the horizon. Led by a dreaded Red Zhao Boot, all were cut down by a mysterious sword master from the Li family. Sha Yong scoffs at first, suspecting exaggeration, but the gravity in Sha Qingshuang's eyes betrays the truth. The Red Zhao was no ordinary beast. It once belonged to the sacred Holy Palace. Shocked by the report, they ridicule the outsider's intervention, claiming this isn't Li territory. But from within the carriage, Li Yuanzhao explodes with rage, revealing his lineage as a Li scion. The air tightens, tension crackles between pride and power. In that instant, the battlefield is no longer just demon-ridden. It becomes a stage for clashing legacies. Tan Palace Academy students, pretending to be from the Li family? Sha Yong sneered, but his smug words slipped out too loudly, drawing sharp glares from all around. His plan to insult them quietly completely backfired. Yet to admit fault now would disgrace the Sha family's name. So, face rigid, he snapped, "To even step foot in Tan Palace Academy, a Li family disciple's talent must be passable at best." The crowd bristled with fury. Tan Palace isn't some random sect entry, is brutal, even if it doesn't rival Mount Wuliang or the Divine General Mansion. Yet Sha Yong made it sound like a low-tier academy for the hopeless. The others, lips pressed thin, dared not challenge him outright. This was Sha territory, after all. But Li Hao? His eyes gleamed with faint amusement. Such a lack of tact. No wonder the ancient generals always lost to scheming officials. Xia Qingshuang, sensing the tension twist into something dangerous, tugged Xia Yong's sleeve. "Brother, let's go!" Her voice was calm, but her pace quickened towards Kangyu City, eager to vanish before this escalated. Xia Yong snorted, masking his blunder with forced arrogance as they turned to leave. But a cold voice followed, slicing through the air, sharper than steel. "Solve your demon crisis and not even a thank you?" Li Hao's gaze locked on them, voice quiet, but the weight behind his words hit like thunder. "Yet you dare speak of the Li family's name in northern Yan?" Xia Qingshuang froze, eyes narrowing at the youth in the carriage, finally realizing this one isn't just another wandering cultivator. He's the core of their troubles, and maybe their reckoning. Though he hadn't seen them in over a decade, Li Hao still remembered the withered demon corpse his stern father had sent from the warfront, and the fleeting worry in his mother's Isa memory etched deeper than word. They were still his family. Now, standing amidst a rising storm of political tension, he faced Xia Yang, whose cold voice mocked the Li family sacrifices. What? Seeking support from the court is a crime now? Has the Xia family never needed help defending the border? Li Hao's calm words struck like steel. The Xia scion, face twisting with fury and shame, snapped, "Slap him!" But as spiritual force surged, the one they sought to humiliate stood unmoved even by object manipulation. The undercurrents of legacy, honor, and pride swelled beneath them all, just as the sword above Kang Yu once fell silent, and then descended. Li Hao didn't move. His palm remained steady as invisible force rippled outward, locking the air above his foe. The purple-horned warhorse beneath Xiaoyang shrieked and crumbled, its battlefield pride shattered under unseen pressure. Caught mid-leap, Xiaoyang tumbled awkwardly from the saddle, stunned by the crushing might emanating from the quiet figure within the carriage. Though clad in the same academy garb, Li Hao's presence burned with quiet nobility. 15 Li Realm? Impossible. Xiaoyang's voice cracked with disbelief. This youth was too young, too composed, yet the force he wielded bent the world like iron under will. Xia Qing's expression darkened, but Li Hao's words cut colder than any blade. "Apologize, or no one leaves." Rage flashed. Xiaoyang bellowed about borders and names, but Li Hao's gaze didn't waver. "Even at your doorstep, you owe me that apology." Provoked beyond pride, Xiaoyang erupted in golden light, divine soul unleashed. But Li Hao did not rise. Behind him, his own soul flared like a star reborn, and in the blink of a fist, the heavens trembled. This was the half-step invincible fist, and it answered arrogance with silence. In a flash, the collision landed. Li Hao's restrained strike still eclipsed the fourth form of the Endless Sea by threefold. Xiaoyang's divine soul, once proud and solid, melted like snow in a furnace, obliterated in an instant. Blood gushed from his mouth as terror overtook him. His body collapsed, unconscious, fingers still raised in disbelief. The silence after was heavier than thunder. Li Hao's soul had already returned, his gaze unwavering. Shanxing Shuang's breath caught. She knew the damage was catastrophic. Even with all their elixirs, recovery would be a distant hope. Her face twisted in fury, but she could only accuse, "Your attack was exceedingly ruthless." Ice met ice as Li Hao replied coldly, "Your Xia family dared humiliate the Li clan publicly. Not killing him was mercy." Realizing her weakness, Shanxing Shuang withdrew her anger, lifting her fallen kin from afar. She conceded, voice tight, "For saving Kang Yu, I'll let this end here." But both knew this was no end, only the pause before a deeper storm. The horse galloped into the dusk, carrying the wounded Xiaoyang as she abandoned her plan to visit Kang Yu City, turning instead toward her clan urgency etched across her face. Inside the carriage, those left behind slowly grasped the truth. The clash between Li Hao and the Xia family had occurred beyond sight in the realm of divine souls, unreachable to those uninitiated. Frustration simmered. "The Xia family is truly shameless," someone muttered, while Ren Xianxian's expression darkened her growing loyalty to Li Hao, now clashing with her fading respect for the once revered divine general mansion. Li Hao remained silent, unmoved, his gaze calm as he ordered the journey to resume. Such arrogance among powerful families was nothing new, and though his view of the Xia dimmed, he chose not to carry hate. Back in Qingzhou, the group returned to Tan Palace Academy with a letter stamped by the Monster Suppression Department, full marks, effortlessly earned. Su Yahua merely nodded. Status carried its own power, and in this empire, even truth bowed to legacy. Even the proud daughters and sons of the Li family had to be treated with a measure of respect. Such was the shadow cast by the Divine General's name. Jianghu was not in the wilds, but buried deep in the hearts of men, right within the city walls. After the formal reports concluded, Ren Qianqian sought out Li Hao and expressed her intent. She had made her decision. Yet Li Hao did not accept her request outright. Becoming a sword attendant under the Li family was no light oath. Once taken, there was no turning back. The techniques learned were a chain of silk and steel binding tighter than blood. Ren Qianqian spoke of her mother's early death and her unwillingness to speak with her father. This was a path she would choose alone, but to Li Hao, her resolve only showed her youth. He refused her again, unwilling to take advantage of her naivety, unwilling to ignite the fury of her grandmaster father. With the matter left unresolved, he returned to the long-lost mountain and river courtyard, carrying the severed head of the Tiger Robe Immortal in a box proof of conquest, blood-wrapped silent. He ordered Qingji to deliver a portion of the delicacies he had brought from Kang Yu City to the Fifth Elder and took the rest toward Listening Rain Tower. Yet, the second elder wasn't there. Li Hao and "It's Hauer," came the voice, light yet firm. Feng Boping grinned with pride, boasting, "Of course I caught more." But no one paid much mind. After all, this wasn't about numbers anymore. Years ago, when just 12, Li Hao had stunned even the elders by casually hooking a small flood dragon from the divine travel realm, a feat both terrifying and envy-inducing. Compared to Li Julang, once hailed as the Millennium's greatest talent, Li Hao's presence made legends seem pale. That dragon cooked and devoured with mixed feelings of regret and relish became a tale of irony and fate. Watching him now, even the reclusive Li Mushu had once wanted to mold him into a martial prodigy, dreaming of a true immortal rising from the Li family. But Li Hao, ever quiet, turned instead to Elder Feng, who understood freedom better than legacy. Wuxia gave up, knowing forced cultivation would only cage the boy's spirit, and yet, without formal instruction, Li Hao's realm soared faster than any had seen. In truth, few knew just how high he'd climbed, for Li Mushu kept it silent, guarded. And now, with Feng Boping's laughter still lingering, Wuxia only sighed, shooting a glance his way. What's the use of catching more? Is this conversation helpful so far? They're all just small fry. I'm here for dragons, Li Hao muttered coolly, as energy lines spun from his fingers like threads of fate, skewering demonfish with invisible precision. Beside him, the elders laughed, but none used rods. Only sheer control of heaven and earth guided their hunt for monsters deeper in the water. Catch one first, then talk, came the teasing reply. Just as tension dissolved into ease, Li Hao returned bearing rare treats from Kangyu City, casually offering food to the two elders as though he hadn't just silenced 8 great demons days prior. You were off bullying kids, weren't you? One mocked, but Li Hao only smiled. The moment softened as the little white fox, Xiao Ru, darted into his arms, nuzzling the roasted meat he offered. This fox of yours acts more like a fish-hungry cat, the elder said, earning a smug fox's grin in return. They sat by the water, quiet, sharing biscuits and memories, the scent of crisp pastries mingling with sunset light. Your father should return soon, came the words that stilled even Li Hao's chewing. Could the war that had haunted the empire for over a decade truly be nearing its end? His eyes narrowed. Peace might come, but peace was never simple. A sudden turn at the northern Yan front brings whispers of retreat from the Holy Palace, and with it, Li Hao's chance to see the parents he barely remembers. As old memories stir, so too does the weight of legacy. The elders gather, eyes set on the Li family's coming storm where the true dragon seat, the highest inheritance, is up for claim. With his father's return imminent, Li Hao stands poised on the edge of destiny. Yet Feng Boping's teasing hides sharp truths. Memories fade, and power must be balanced. Even with unmatched talent, Li Hao must navigate the clan's tangled web honor, bloodlines, and the silent expectations of every watching eye. This year, the true dragon will rise, and Li Hao's blade may finally carve his path. He had always heard tales whispered by the elders of the true dragon, the throne of supremacy within the Li family. Every generation, one would be chosen, granted ancestral blessings, soul elevation, and unmatched resources. While most could only condense 80 soul forms in the soul succession realm, the true dragon could reach a legendary 180, rivaling even the royal bloodlines. From soul condensation to divine soul, from divine travel to the 15 Li realm, every step was reinforced by the spirits of the ancestors. The true dragon would be invincible, a being who redefined the standard of genius. And now, Li Hao, already at the peak of the 15 Li realm, stood at the edge of this legacy. Though he had never yearned for the title, the poison from years past had awakened a storm in his heart. He knew if he did not claim the seat, someone else would. And the moment that happened, the path of the true dragon would be forever sealed away from him. To carry the Li family's ancient legacy was never a mere honor, it was a burden veiled in glory. Li Hao knew this well. Betrayed years ago by those who feared his rise, he had waited in silence, sharpening blade and soul for this very moment. Now, as the true dragon test loomed, measuring not only talent, but heart, will, and connection, she stood composed, listening to the elders' banter while preparing a quiet riverside meal under a sky turning to dusk. 3 days later, the patrol envoy returned. Weary but stirred Song Yueyao, having witnessed Li Hao's strength, could not shake the impression he left. In her years among prodigies, none had ever unsettled her like this. The mold had cracked, and a new force had stepped forward. As Yue Yao prepared to return to Black and White Hall with news of the devastating events at Kangyu, she crossed paths with Swan old friend whose voice carried the ease of familiarity and concern. "You're back so soon?" Su asked gently, her brows knitting as she sensed Yue Yao's exhaustion. At the mention of great demons, Yue Yao flinched, the memory of mountains of demon corpses flashing like a blade in her mind. Su's expression shifted, half in worry, half in disbelief. "Did they cause trouble for you?" she probed, referring to the unruly young masters known more for arrogance than merit. But Yue Yao's response was quiet, almost stunned. "No," she said. There was a major incident in Kangyu City, and behind her composed exterior, the image remained Li Hao standing alone on the bloodied city walls, a silent sword in his hand, the air still humming with the aftershock of 8 slain great demons, as the heavens seemed to tremble at a boy who no longer needed to prove himself. "What? You mean if Li Hao hadn't stepped in, you wouldn't have made it back alive?" Su Yahua's voice trembled as she stared at Song Yueo in disbelief, her mind struggling to connect the name with the boy she remembered dozing off in class. Song Yueo's calm nod sent chills down her spine. Li Hao, now at the peak of the 15 Li realm, had single-handedly decimated the demon tide in Kangyu City. His silent sword, slicing through 8 great demons like falling snow. As Song Yueyao recounted the impossible scene, his figure rising against the crimson sky, fiends fleeing in terror, Su Yahua could only gape, her thoughts spinning. 14 years old? How? Why was someone of that level even at their academy? A quiet smile touched Yueyao's lips before she turned to leave, her exhaustion replaced with subtle pride. Watching her go, Su Yahua finally understood why Li Hao never joined ranking matches, didn't need to. In a world of pretenders, he was the real thing. Do you like this personality? As the disciples assembled before Su Yahua, a storm of silent judgment swirled in the air. The princes stood out, having fearlessly tackled the hardest missions, each worth 15 credits, and earned unanimous praise from their teams. Not only that they emerged with 3rd and 2nd class merits, something nearly unheard of outside battlefield zones. Whispers spread like wildfire had they faced a demon siege, or had the monster suppression department simply handed them honors due to hidden ties. Yu Wei's hushed suspicion about possible favoritism was met with alarm from Du Qiyue, for speaking on royal politics was like playing with fire. Whether through valor or influence, the princes had carved their names in glory. Meanwhile, others like Wang Han, Li Yun, and their siblings had also chosen the most difficult paths and earned top marks, though without the gleam of military merits. Reactions among noble-born disciples were mixed, some admiring, others dismissive, chalking it all up to family names. But under their teenage facades lay the simmering realization: status could shape destiny. Watching from the sidelines, Li Yuanzhao noticed his cousins, praised by Su Yahua Li Yun, ever the showboat, even stood grinning with a gauze-wrapped arm, injured yet proud. In contrast, Li Yuanzhao's thoughts drifted to someone else entirely. Li Hao. He didn't just enjoy Li Hao's company because they shared similar root set, was the aura, the unshakable swagger that drew him in. Calm as drifting clouds, Li Hao moved through life with effortless grace, once saying, "If a mountain's in the way, we go around it." That wasn't laziness, it was precision. In the chaos of Kangyu City, while others trembled, he alone stood firm, his flying sword tearing through the tide of demons, saving the city without fanfare. Unlike those who chase glory, Li Hao walked away quietly, fame clinging to him like shadows at dusk. Even princes paled beside his effortless strength. While others broadcast their rank, Li Hao, already at the peak of the 15 Li realm, spoke only of clarity over ambition, calling fame a burden. To Li Yuanzhao, this was revelation raw, unfiltered awe. That's why he followed him, not for gain, but to understand. And now, as Li Yu noticed his absence, a strange unease took root. "Where is Li Hao?" he asked. Su Yahua looked toward the void where Li Hao once stood, her voice soft with mystery. "He's been accepted into the Black and White Hallen exception among exceptions." As the disciples assembled before Su Yahua, a storm of silent judgment swirled in the air. The princes stood out, having fearlessly tackled the hardest missions, each worth 15 credits, and earned unanimous praise from their teams. Not only that, they emerged with 3rd and 2nd class merits, something nearly unheard of outside battlefield zones. Whispers spread like wildfire had they faced a demon siege, or had the monster suppression department simply handed them honors due to hidden ties. Yu Wei's hushed suspicion about possible favoritism was met with alarm from Duke Yu Wei, for speaking on royal politics was like playing with fire. Whether through valor or influence, the princes had carved their names in glory. Meanwhile, others like Wang Han, Li Yun, and their siblings had also chosen the most difficult paths and earned top marks. Though without the gleam of military merits, reactions among noble-born disciples were mixed, some admiring, others dismissive, chalking it all up to family names. But under their teenage facades lay the simmering realization. Sta? What? The single word shattered the calm like thunder over Alpha Academy. A wave of disbelief surged through the students' whispers, turning into shouts, curiosity into unrest. In the crowd, Jiang Ye's smile stiffened and cracked. Even as a prince, he had obeyed the rules. Yet Li Hao, the silent storm from the Li family, was exempted? Shadows curled behind his eyes as rage clawed at his composure, barely held down by years of imperial discipline. Teacher! His voice cut through the noise like a blade, steady but edged. Why was he accepted as an exception? All eyes turned to Su Yehua. She met the storm with a breeze, unfazed, calm. Li Hao's cultivation has surpassed all of you. During the mission in Kangyu, his merit was unmatched. If he stayed here, we teachers could no longer guide him, and he'd only dominate your rankings without challenge. Shock froze the academy. Higher than all of them? Had he already grasped soul inheritance? Even Li Yun and Li Jining turned bewildered toward Li Yuanzhaoho, only smiled faintly, a secret thrill rising in his chest. Somewhere far from the chaos, Kangyu still echoed with sword cries and falling demons, proof that one boy had turned a city's despair into legend. Is this conversation helpful so far? Tusk could shape destiny. Watching from the sidelines, Li Yuanzhao noticed his cousins praised by Su Yehua Li Yun, ever the showboat, even stood grinning with a gauze-wrapped arm. Injured, yet proud. In contrast, Li Yuanzhao's thoughts drifted to someone else entirely. Li Hao, wanna know? I'm not telling you, cause Hao didn't want it told. He said he just wanted a few quiet days. But how could something like what happened in Kangyu City stay hidden? Li Yuanzhao could barely contain his excitement, imagining the stunned faces when everyone discovered Hao's cultivation after so many years. The Li family would shine again. In the black and white hall of Tan Palace, Song Yufeng sat unmoving before cold tea, surrounded by elders whose eyes all fell on a quiet youth. Li Hao stood there, feeling like an animal in a cage, his patience thinning. "Thank you for letting me in," he said, his voice calm yet piercing. "But I don't like wasting time." The air shifted, the silence cracked. For Li Hao, the one who single-handedly turned the tide in Kangyu by slaying 8 great demons with a single sword, titles and ceremonies were hollow. He had already walked through the fire. Now, it was the world's turn to look up. At just 14, standing at the peak of the 15 Li realm, Li Hao's presence alone silenced the Tan Palace hall. His cultivation was so profound, even Song Yufeng couldn't pierce through it. His secret technique too refined, too deep. This wasn't some reckless prodigy flaunting raw strength. This was a boy who chose concealment, precision, silence. "You could have entered any palace," Song Yufeng asked. "Why ours?" Eyes from all corners watched. Was it for a legacy technique? For vengeance? For glory? Li Hao paused, then answered with calm clarity. "That morning, I just wanted a piece of Manhwa fragrant crisp." The silence deepened. What? A legendary realm chaser? For a snack? The absurdity cracked the air. Yet behind that simple answer, the storm over Kangyu would soon gather. Is this conversation helpful so far? He had sworn the secret would never be passed on, and he never broke that vow. The elders of Tan Palace Academy, once angered by the defiant third son of the Li family, now nodded with silent respect, for his name had been washed in blood and valor beyond the frontiers. Though once scorned, his death had become legend. The Taiji Chankun sword pierced 17 demon kings, blinding the world with its brilliance and restoring glory to their sect. Yet rules remained could not claim the Academy's ultimate inheritance without 3 full years of study. When a new prodigy appeared, soaring at the peak of the 15 Li realm, shaking even the White Hall with his presence, the elders debated. Could tradition contain a storm like him? Was it right to restrain such talent for the sake of rules? Old bonds stirred within Shen Yunqing's heart the remembered shared meals, laughter, the weight of the boy's silent sword, and yet he too could not bend the rule. The path forward was not one of favor, but fire. If Li Hao was to rise, he would rise through stone, steel, and silence. Let the world watch. Let the heavens judge. Is this conversation helpful so far? Rules were broken deliberately. The Tan Palace cultivates prodigies, not puppets. Huang Lecao's voice cut through the dispute, declaring that true genius should never be shackled by convention. Yet whispers rose. If other factions sought the sword manual, would its worth be diluted? Song Yufeng, ever the tactician, silenced them all with a middle path. Li Hao could either teach for a year or take a nominal title in the Black and White Hall, ensuring tradition remained intact. The crowd fell silent, admiring the palace master's cunning. Meanwhile, near Thousand Wren Cliff, beside a still pond that reflected the sky like glass, Li Hao stood entranced. Drawn by the clarity of its waters, he returned with paper and ink. With practiced ease, he sketched not just for beauty, but for mastery. Each stroke honed his painting experience, for the art system rewarded depth of spirit and subject. While copying great demons or legendary cultivators gave more experience, repeating a painting dulled its yield. But Li Hao knew true awakening in the art of painting demanded more than experience. It demanded obsession, 1,000 renditions of a single truth. For now, he remained at the 5th stage, just shy of the 6th, his hands steady, his eyes unwavering. The path to spirit was long, but he had already begun. Is this conversation helpful so far? With bold, sweeping strokes, Li Hao's brush danced across the paper, summoning forth towering cliffs and a mysterious deep pond, each painting infused with an increasing surge of painting experience plus 183, plus 145, plus 92, until something stirred. Beneath the pond's surface, a massive shadow uncoiled, its Qingmeng disrupted by the sensation of being watched. With a sharp pulse of spiritual thought, it detected the young intruder, Li Hao, standing at the bank. "Whose little ghost is this?" it muttered, before surging to the surface and leaping skyward, water exploding in its wake. As Li Hao prepared to begin his 4th painting, his brush halted mid-air at the sight of the creature drenched in shimmering blue, horns curling from its crown. A water Kylan. The two locked eyes. "Who allowed you to be here? Scram immediately!" The Kylan's voice rang out, crisp and cold like a mountain spring, scolding him with unexpected elegance. Li Hao stood frozen, thoughts racing. Could this truly be the legendary guardian beast of Tan Palace? The great demon king once subdued by its founding master? The stories had spoken of a mighty being in the Four Stands real man now. It stared straight at him. Li Hao's pupils gleamed. "Senior, do you like this personality?" Li Hao lowered his gaze with reverence, hands clasped, his voice calm yet passionate. "May I have the honor of painting your portrait?" The water Kylan blinked, utterly bewildered. Was this mortal so consumed by cultivation that he lost his wits? Its eyes flashed with disdain, the pond darkening with cold as it growled. "Speak again, and I'll freeze you where you stand." But Li Hao remained unmoved. Though the creature's aura surged like thunder over still waters, he understood its nature more bark than bite. "I'm from the Li family," he said, lips taut. "Eating me might not agree with your stomach." That name struck a nerve. The Kylan's murderous glare dimmed, uncertainty flickering like ripples on the surface. "Li family? I won't eat you, but perhaps a bit of punishment." Yet even in that threat was hesitation. It couldn't risk clashing with the old monsters down the mountain over something so petty. Pride simmered in its divine blood, but honor kept its rage in check. Annoyed, it stirred the water snot with fury. But to hurl this bold youth far from its sacred pool, just as the ancient beast poised in solemn majesty above the emerald waters, Li Hao suddenly cried out, "Don't move!" His voice sharp and urgent. The water Kylan froze, its pure blue eyes filled with curiosity as this strange young artist, with a brush like a blade, began to paint fervently. Amid the thunderous cascade of the pond and the towering cliffside, the scene before him felt otherworldly, too divine to waste. "Please, senior, hold that pose a moment longer," he begged, completely immersed in his craft. The brush danced like wind, strokes flowing with spirit and soul. Ink bled into depth and form his focus absolute. Half an incense stick's time passed. The beast stirred, the water shifted, but he was already finishing the final blade of grass, the final ripple of the pond. With the last stroke, the scroll shimmered, complete. A system chime echoed in his soul, painting experience plus 1986. His heart leapt. This single moment, this painting, was worth more than hundreds. Turning to the Kylan, eyes shining with gratitude, he bowed deeply. Thank you, Senior. As he returned to himself, Li Hao quickly bowed to the water Kylan. Gratitude deep in his eyes, not just for the experience, but for the creature's rare cooperation, allowing his brush to capture something transcendent. Painting had become more than a tool for growth. It was now a devotion. Is it done? The Kylan asked, curiosity veiled in a calm tone. Li Hao turned the canvas around. The sight stunned even the proud beast-jagged cliffs, the solitary emerald pond, waves roaring beneath a regal Kylan, sovereign of the waters. Was this really her? For a moment, silence. Then the Kylan stepped forward, her body dissolving into a flicker, and reformed as a woman cloaked in azure robes, her pale feet drifting mid-air, a mark like a teardrop by her eye, her gaze locked onto the still wet ink. She studied it no longer with pride, but awe. Her voice softened. You painted this? For me? Do you like it, Senior? Li Hao asked, his smile faint but his tension clear. Seeing her eyes glisten with approval, he exhaled light, relieved. If you do, then it's yours. The water Kylan's rare smile shimmered across the cold pond, as if the icy world had been bathed in spring light. Her voice, airy yet sincere, carried admiration. I didn't expect such mastery from a human. This feels as if I'm truly standing on the page, Li Hao replied humbly, as long as Senior is pleased. To him, painting wasn't just replication, it was transcendence, a quiet beauty that filtered reality into elegance. With a gentle gaze, he asked, Senior, may I paint you in your human form? This time, she didn't refuse. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. You can still paint? Li Hao grinned, confident. If you're willing to pose, I can paint endlessly. She agreed, stepping to the pond's edge, her silhouette half turned, as if waiting in silence for something long lost. Her beauty merged with the water's reflection, graceful, distant, yet tender. With swift strokes and focused breath, Li Hao painted. When the incense burned low, the piece was done. Painting experience plus 1738. A different form. A new soul captured. As she received the scroll, her breath caught the woman on paper was ethereal, melancholy, as if born from moonlight and mist, a water lily untouched by the mortal world. In a quiet moment beside the cold pond, the water Kylan stared at the painting her own image, yet strangely distant, more beautiful, more sorrowful than she remembered. Could it be that this expression truly reflected her 1,000 years of solitude? A beast among humans, surrounded by noise yet drowning in loneliness, she lost herself in the gaze of the painted self. Li Hao, without a word, cleaned his tools and captured her, once more her entranced face frozen in time by his brush. With no photos in this world, this was the only way to preserve a fleeting emotion. As the third painting was completed, another surge of experience flowed into him, over 5,000 gained through mere strokes. When she returned to herself, asking softly if he had finished, Li Hao smiled inwardly. She had noticed him all along, yet chose to stay still, allowing him to see through her. He turned the canvas, and as she looked upon her painted reflection, memories long buried flickered behind her eyes. Could this boy truly understand her ancient soul? Her smile deepened, no longer distant. Your painting skills are indeed impressive, she said, and for the first time her voice held warmth. You're from the Li family? The ancient beast's gaze sharpened. Li Hao nodded calmly. A branch of the Divine General Mansion, yes. The water Kylan narrowed her eyes. Strange. The Li family forbids distractions. How are you allowed to paint? Painting isn't a distraction, Li Hao replied, lips curved faintly. Even swordsmen need moments of stillness. The Kylan scoffed until Li Hao released his Aura 15 Li, vast and unyielding, then cloaked it again as if it were nothing. Her breath caught. So young, yet his blood essence pulsed like spring. If you're free, Senior, may I paint another, he offered, eyes steady. She looked at the drawing scroll in her hand and simply nodded. By the emerald pond, brush met silk once more. 11 paintings passed, the 12th barely raising his mastery. Still, compared to others, it was progress. Finally, she held the last piece, her proud, ancient face breaking into a rare, radiant smile. We'll stop here, she said softly. And Li Hao, the boy with the silent sword, simply bowed, the tip of his brush still wet with spirit. "Are you dissatisfied, senior?" Li Hao asked, pausing his brush mid-stroke. The water Kylan gently shook her head, her tone light yet thoughtful. "Today, I look too plain. Your painting is too skilled to waste on an ordinary face. I'll dress up more next time." For a moment, Li Hao was speechless. He had thought beauty was a mortal's concern, not something a great demon king would fuss over. Wasn't she already radiant? Still, he didn't argue. "All right then," he said, knowing there'd be many tomorrows. "What's your name?" she asked. "Li Hao." Her eyes flickered with mild surprises. A name carried weight, almost royal. Seizing the moment, Li Hao asked in return, "And you, senior?" With a soft smile, she replied, "I took my surname from the first palace master. My name is Song Chumo." Li Hao nodded slowly, imprinting the name in memory. "Senior Chumo, I'll visit again when I'm free. How should I call you?" Her answer was simple. "Just touch the pond water, I'll know." He smiled. "Till we meet again, senior." Song Chumo vanished into the depths like a rippleless dream, her dozen paintings shielded by energy, untouched by water. Li Hao watched, struck by her elegance, silently awarding her a perfect score for the dive. Rather than leaving, he kept sketching the cliff, the pond, the lingering silent chasing the elusive essence that his imagined beasts and grand illusions could never capture. Stroke after stroke, canvas after canvas, experience flowed like quiet rivers into him. Just as he prepared to leave, a voice echoed through the mist. Poetic lines woven with melancholy drifted his way. A figure emerged, cloaked in noble bearing, and as their eyes met, recognition dawned. Xianxia, a prince of Alpha Academy. The moment hung awkwardly in the air, Xianxia, having recited poetry aloud, flushed with embarrassment. But as he measured the calm boy before him, he scoffed inwardly. What could a general's son know of verse and soul? Their eyes met for just a second, enough to spark something unspoken. Xianxia fought the heat creeping up his cheeks and offered a polite smile. "Young Master Li?" The boy in question replied with a simple, emotionless, "Hello." His voice was cold, his gaze distant. Li Hao had no patience for the entanglements of the royal family. He'd already warned Yuan Zhao. Steer clear of these waters, they're deeper than they seem. Xianxia's curiosity got the better of him. "What are you doing here?" His eyes lingered on the drawing board before Li Hao. Was it training? Practice? No, he was sketching. Calmly, deliberately, Li Hao answered while grinding ink, his focus never breaking. For a moment, Xianxia's casual air vanished. There was something about this boy, this sole successor granted entry to the black and white hall that demanded respect. Back at Alpha Academy, Zhang had noticed him, watched him. After all, the name Li Hao came from the emperor himself. From birth, he'd heard the whispers. And now, face to face, Zhang realized how wrong he'd been to assume this boy was merely coddled by favor. As Xianxia stood in silent awe, he watched Li Hao's brush dance across the paper each stroke, breathing life into a mountain and pond scene so vivid it felt as though nature itself had bowed to ink and will. This boy, once overlooked, now painted with a presence that silenced even noble blood. Curious, yet humbled, Zhang asked if Li Hao could truly paint, only to be met with a calm retort likening it to writing poetry. Embarrassed, Zhang admitted his own verse had been born of impulse, not mastery. When he pressed Li Hao about his understanding of poetry, the answer came cool and quiet, a little. Challenged to compose one, Li Hao merely glanced back. The depths of his spirit unreadable, his poetic skill leveled, yet without the elusive poetry heart. In that charged stillness, brush and silence echoed louder than words. Exactly, why not? Use this cold pool you painted as the subject for your poem, and let's both write one. How about it? Xianxia's eyes gleamed with challenge. His pride still stung from his earlier failed recitation. He needed redemption. And a poetry duel was his chosen weapon. Li Hao, ever unreadable, gave a sidelong glance, replying coolly, "The cold pool, you say? You go first then. You should start, Li. My poetic flair is shallow. I need to ponder more." Zhang deflected hastily, but Li Hao saw through the excuse. Zhang's last poem hadn't even rhymed. Without fuss, Li Hao closed his eyes and spoke. Li Bai sets off in his boat, suddenly hearing song from the riverside. 1,000 feet deep is the water of Peach Blossom Pond, not as deep as Wang Lun's gift to me. As the final word left his lips, his brush continued gliding over the canvas, unbothered by applause or silence. Experience points? None gained. Respect for the poem's origin? Absolute. Relevance to their current setting? Who cares? Jiang Hangsing blinked. Half dazed, there was power in those lines. Li, you didn't compose that just now, did you? It doesn't quite fit this scene. Li Hao didn't flinch, simply replying, just tell me if there's a pond in there. Speechless. Jiang really is, yes. There was a pond, but not a single peach blossom in sight. There wasn't a hint of elegance here, let alone a peach blossom. After a beat, Jiang Hangsing squinted, voice sharp with doubt. Did you really write this yourself? Li Hao remained unfazed, brushing off the suspicion with a cool, there's no other author in this world but me. His tone was so calm, it was almost arrogant. Jiang Hangsing faltered, curiosity pricking deeper. Then who is this Li Bai you mentioned? A Li, naturally an ancestor of my clan, Li Hao replied without blinking. And Wang Lun? The top brother of my ancestor, he answered solemnly. Jiang Hangsing was left blinking. What in the world was a top brother? The absurdity of it all left him stunned. Your turn, Li Hao nudged. Snapping back to reality, Jiang Hangsing nearly cursed, but luckily he'd come prepared. He'd already penned a poem about a waterfall and a cold pond, perfect to mask the awkwardness. While it didn't exactly match today's scene, it was at least leagues better than the mess Li Hao had recited. After reciting his own verse, Jiang Hangsing gave a smug smile. Li, what's your take on my poem? Li Hao chuckled softly, very moist. Jiang Hangsing took it as praise and returned the compliment half-heartedly. Although yours didn't really match the scenery, it wasn't too bad. So you actually got smug? Li Hao's gaze sharpened, inwardly scoffing. That poem? You dare be proud of that? When challenged to another poetic duel, he didn't hesitate. As a cultivator of words and soul, he would not let hollow arrogance trample true art. You choose, he said coldly. Perhaps the waterfall? Came the hesitant reply. A slight grin tugged at Li Hao's lips. You really want to duel me with your weakest blade? Without lifting his brush, he looked up and unleashed his answer like a blade, drawn from silence. Viewing the waterfall at Mount Lu, as his voice cascaded through the verses, each word poured like thunder from the heavens. From a leap of 3,000 feet, it seems as if the Milky Way has descended from the heavens, and at that moment, Jiang Hangsing froze, eyes wide, breath stolen, his pride shattered by the sheer grandeur. The scene of a cosmic waterfall blazed in his mind, majestic and unrelenting. He had no poem to answer with. Li Hao merely smiled, letting ancient brilliance speak for him, leaving Jiang Hangsing lost in awe and defeat. With the brush's stroke echoing the waterfall's soul, Li Hao unveiled a poem that silenced even the proudest hearts not crafted on the spot, but plucked from his own vault of verses. Still enough to expose a talent none could deny. Martial artists aren't scholars. Yet this boy, born of the divine general mansion, wielded art like blade and ink like war. Jiang Hangsing bowed, utterly convinced, and asked if Li Hao's elders disapproved of such pursuits. They did, came the quiet reply. They just couldn't stop me. Amused, Jiang left the young painter to his silence. The next morning, summoned by Shen Yunqing, Li Hao accepted the role of honorary professor under one condition: the freedom to paint. For him, even a year was too long without the brush. The true dragon path loomed ahead, but first, the water Kylan awaited his ink. Li Hao, ever composed and unreadable, made an odd request, wanted to be a model. Song Yufeng, slightly surprised but unfazed, agreed with a wry smile. After all, it was a minor demand from a rising star of the Li clan. The honorary professor role required 30 classes across 10 years, no challenge for someone like him. But these weren't students of the prestigious Alpha Academy, they were from the Black and White Hall. Li Hao didn't care who listened, he simply had to teach. The agreement was smooth, each side gaining exactly what they wanted. As he stepped out of the Tan Palace, ready to plunge into cold cultivation, Li Yuanchao appeared. Wu Shuang has returned, he said. The words froze Li Hao. A banquet was planned to welcome her, the girl who had once left amid tears and mystery. Now, she was backgrown, perhaps changed. A flicker of memory stirred, then drifted away like mist. Li Hao merely nodded. Still early, he said coolly, already turning, the silent sword in his soul echoing with wind and resolve. He didn't care much about that. Girl barely saw her over the years, not since Li Yun and the others kept their distance. Should we prepare something? Li Yuanzhao asked, recalling vague stories about Miss Wushuang, the star of their generation. Of course, she was no match for Li Hao. Yes, Li Hao replied. She's family after all. He paused, thoughtful. No idea what she likes but food. She must like food. He named Qingzhou's finest dishes: crispy roasted goose from Hongsheng Building, bamboo fragrant dark dragon liver from Emerald Lake Courtyard 7 or 8 in total. Make sure they're hot. Deliver them during dinner. Li Yuanzhao blinked. That's all? They cost barely anything, Li Hao answered coolly. We're not short on silver. It's the thought. She's probably had nothing decent while wandering. She lacks nothing else, and it made sense she was a disciple of Qianji sect, favored by a grandmaster. What could she possibly need? Cultivation techniques? At Listening Rain Tower, she could pick whatever she pleased. Weapons waited quietly in the armory, but she'd likely never bother with gold or jewels. Fine, then I'll take what Hao listed, came the calm response. After the deal was sealed, Li Hao returned to the cold pool with a canvas in hand. As his fingers stirred the water, a shadow erupted, sending silver splashes skyward. Song Chumo in her water Kylan form emerged, majestic and fierce. Just as she was about to shift form, Li Hao's voice stopped her. Please keep it like this. She froze the water midair, a scene of suspended force and grace, and he painted fast, immortalizing her moment of transformation. When he finished, she let the water fall and stepped forward, bare feet silent on the stone. Now, human once more. Eyes bright with a rare joy, she asked, her voice teasing. So, what do you think of my outfit today? Beneath the pale glow by the cold pool, Li Hao glanced back and saw her draped in the same flowing blue dress as before, yet now adorned with silver chains and glinting bracelets that shimmered like stardust. He chuckled, a whisper of amusement in his tone. It looks very beautiful. Song Chumo met his gaze, unreadable, and replied softly, then paint. Without hesitation, he did. His brush traced her form with reverence, her added ornaments enhancing her already ethereal presence into something nearly divine. When the painting was done, a surge of 100 experience points pulsed through him. Those ornaments were no ordinary trinkets. She nodded, pleased but trying not to show it, and he motioned for her to change poses. Again and again, he painted her, sometimes in her true form, her aura unrestrained and overwhelming, a living storm of grace and power. Each stroke brought not just beauty to life, but knowledge, strength. Over 4,000 experience points today alone, nearly 20,000 across both days. Strange how painting her brought far more than painting others, even those with formidable cultivation, perhaps because they hid their essence, while she, for now, let it shine. He smirked inwardly. Next time, he'd need the others to reveal their true selves too. As for persuading Feng, maybe her favorite mushroom chicken stew would loosen her guard. As the moonlight spilled over the cold pool surface, Li Hao called it a day, nodding at Song Chumo, who smiled with sheets of notes clutched in hand. She offered her help again, softly adding that as long as she remained in Tan Palace, her support was his. When Li Hao questioned her confinement, she only shook her head with a faint smile before slipping back into the icy waters, vanishing like a ghost. Packing up his scrolls, Li Hao made his descent, passing the Alpha Academy, where curious eyes turned to him. Disciples halted their training in awe, but with a quick wave and a quiet smile, he slipped away. Reaching the mansion, he noticed an unusual cheer guards bowed with respect, their faces bright. In Mountain and River Courtyard, Zhao delivered news from Kongyu Cityfu had recovered and would return soon. He also handed over a gift box, explaining that Miss Wushuang had returned to the mansion and the lady of the house had arranged a family dinner. Li Hao was invited and expected,